Hi, I'm Lia van Eyk. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Steadily, America's best-rated landlord insurance provider serving real estate investors nationwide. Today, we're joined by Liz Faircloth, who's the co-founder of the Real Estate InvestHer, a global community that empowers women in real estate to live a financially free and balanced life on their own terms. The investor community has many ways for real estate investors to get involved. There's over 21,000 meetup members, Strive mentorship program, a weekly podcast series, a really engaging Facebook group, and the annual InvestHer Con, which is coming up in Austin this June.
Yes.
Thanks for joining us today, Liz.
Thank you so much for having me, Leah. I'm excited to have you guys speaking at InvestHer Con. So it's going to be a great 2-day, it was actually a 3-day conference. So excited about it coming up very soon.
Yeah, we're really looking forward to it. I'd love to just learn a little bit more about your journey and what inspired you to take that leap into real estate, and then what also wanted you to focus on empowering other women to do the same.
Yeah. You know, it's funny because I was so focused to get my degree in social work. I was a psych major. I always wanted to open my own practice. And I just like, the idea of helping people. I did a lot of field placements with people that, women especially, had mental illness, some sort of mental illness and some sort of substance abuse. So I said, actually wrote a business plan on starting a women's center to help women who had these issues. So the irony is that was, 20 years ago. And while that's not exactly our mission, the fact that we're serving women is kind of come full circle. At that time, I was very focused on that goal. And my brother-in-law, who was literally the only entrepreneur I knew, grew up in, my dad was a school teacher. My mother worked in insurance part-time. It's just a hardworking family, very hardworking family. And I got that from my parents, and I'm very grateful for that. Nothing was handed to us. If anything, like going out to dinner and lavish vacations was not a norm for our family. Going to vacation was a big deal. So long story short, my brother-in-law gives me this book, and it just like totally got me thinking about and get my mind open to a whole new world of entrepreneurship, building passive income and building a business. And there was a lot of concepts that I literally had never thought about, learned about prior to that moment in my life. Because, when you're focused on one thing and then you're like, hold on, there's a whole other way to approach your life. That got me on the road of, wow, real estate. I could buy a real estate. I don't have any money to do that. So that might be something we need. So we got a loan from my father. We started educating ourselves, me and my then boyfriend. I met him right around the same time I read the book. So we started really learning together. Literally, I brought him into the fold and I said, let's start learning this. He was an engineer by training. He had a job in engineering, hated it, really hated it. So he was open to anything that I had. It's like, hey, let's try this, because he's hated his job. And a year later, we bought our first property. It was a duplex right outside of Philadelphia. And it was about $150,000, my memory. And we needed about $30K to buy the property and to do the renovations. From what we remember, right? Who knows if we needed to do more renovations than not. It was our first property. So we kind of did the best we could with budgeting and all that good stuff. But we got a loan from my father, which was really a powerful way to begin. And he loaned it to us at a 6% interest rate, which was great at the time, and we paid it back, and got our start there. And that really propelled us to getting the bug of investing in. And then we really moved our business to New Jersey and grew our business in Trenton, New Jersey in particular, and then went from there in terms of other markets. And so, at the time, 2013-ish, I, had my first kiddo, my son, who's now 10. And he really, staying home with him, I kind of retired in a sense from my consulting job. So rewind, I ended up getting a consulting job working there for many years while my husband was the primary person building the business. And I was helping him, but more on a part-time basis because I was working also full-time for many years. And when I left that work and I had my son, we really started to build up our rental portfolio, started to build our income from there. And I had the ability to stay home, and take a break. And my goal, my plan was to join him full time in the real estate business. And in that moment of having my son and being home with him, I really started to get very down. I was very disconnected. I felt very alone, to be honest with you. And I know I'm not unique in sharing that as a new mom. The work that I did for a decade, literally the consulting work, it stopped, right? So my whole value before kids went away. I'm a new mom And now I'm like building this business with my husband, and on paper, everything was growing. Everything was a healthy boy. We had a business that was able to, take care of us finally after many years of building a rental portfolio. And then months later, I met Andressa and we started connecting and chatting, and it really was like, well, let's start a women's mastermind. And we started pulling women together for free before InvestHer. Like, let's start getting the women's journey here. Cause like, I'm a new mom. I got young kids. I'm now partners in building this business with my husband. And that really opened up this whole ability to like serve women in this space. And then fast forward, really building out InvestHer. Quite honestly, there's just, you think of investing, you think of it's a male dominated space. So we said, would it be wonderful to have a space just for women? Because statistically, women don't have the confidence, as much as men in the investing space. Not because they're not great investors. We just don't have as many models, right? Growing up, we don't think investing. We don't think of a woman necessarily. I think that's changing. And I think we're moving into a space that women are going to be controlling more and more wealth, like tremendous amount of wealth. So, and women outperform men as investors. So it's just a matter of having them do it more. And so what started as like creating space for me and Andressa as we're growing our families and creating balance in our life now became this thing that most women was like, I want to be part of that. So we really started to build out this community, not just for ourselves, but for other women and other companies like yourselves who have great, phenomenal products that could serve the women in our community. So yeah, it started kind of like serving myself, to be honest, because I really was looking for additional purpose and meaning. And I loved real estate, but I just knew it wasn't enough. So this really created this passion and purpose that I didn't just have just pure as an investor, because it's much bigger than investing. It's serving women in a really meaningful way and living life on their own terms.
I love that. And it's so interesting to hear some of these insights about women investors outperforming male investors. Like, I didn't know that. That's really interesting. And one of the ways that you engage with the community, like you said, is helping women with all these different facets of life that they're constantly juggling. They have their home life, they have their investments, they have, their own health and well-being. Yeah. I'm curious what you hear from women in the community and how investors are able to respond to some of those changing needs as women go through their lifespan and their priorities change over time.
Yeah, I certainly am not an expert for all women. Of course, I can't speak for all women, but what I can say in talking with so many of them and what we see is that so many of them rely on themselves. And it's so interesting because when women don't rely on themselves, like magic happens, right? And you see that even from like an economic perspective, not just from a social perspective, but like last summer, there was an article written in the Wall Street Journal that said women owned the economy. And so what was interesting was that the Barbie movie came out last summer, Beyonce, Taylor Swift. And what was interesting with all of these different economic kind of drivers, because that's what ended up happening, was that women were doing all these things together, literally together. They had and so that drove up the sales of all of those three items, and that made women the primary driving economic force of the summer. I say that because we see that with mud runs. We see that with so many different things, right? That like women have this phenomenal spirit together. They'll wear the same shirt. Like, women do a lot together. Yet when it comes to investing or certain areas of their life, they're doing it alone. So there's a stark difference between what we see as success when they do it together, yet what so many women are actually doing in their life. They don't have neighbors who are investing. They look at them weird. They ask their mother, and their mother's like, it's a horrible time. Interest rates are high, So we have so many people in our lives that are not actually supporting us. It's actually it's always a great time. You have to be smart. You have to figure out the right approach, but I don't ask my mother about investing. I love her dearly. She's not who I go to. I'll go to the women who are in my mastermind and ask them what they think of X, Y, and Z. So I think there's a dichotomy, right? Women actually thrive when they're doing things together, yet we just haven't brought that same energy to investing. And that's exactly what we're doing with InvestHer, because in essence, not just buying properties together, but literally supporting each other and saying, I'm analyzing this deal. What do you guys see? Is it a good time in this market? Maybe I should do something different here and try to buy a business because I don't know, just getting frustrated with my market. So That's what I think is the shift. And I think that's a shift that's happening, and success happens, and like magic. There's a lot of magic and power and when that happens, especially when we see that at our conference and women are just, doing deals together and connecting with each other. And, I think that's very powerful. It's called the women's multiplier effect is what they coined the term. And there's a lot of not just like energy around it, but actually economic force. That was very, very, very clear when we saw those three things happening last summer.
Yeah, I remember reading headlines about that, the Taylor Swift effect, and how she had caused an uplift in the whole domestic economy. Super fascinating.
It is super fascinating. I'm like, and then my 7-year-old just had a Taylor Swift themed party this weekend. So,
Oh, nice.
enjoyed that. So
I'm a big Swiftie over here.
Yeah. So. Oh my God. We were singing songs. We had a karaoke machine. It was great.
It's interesting you spoke about the relationship with other women who are in the mastermind and learning from one another. I was really fortunate that my mother was my role model when it came to investing.
That's
and
great.
I bought my first rental property with her, actually.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, a couple of years out of college. And so I was fortunate back then to have that kind of inspiration. But without that, a community like InvestHer would have been a phenomenal resource, because I really didn't see it anywhere else if I hadn't had that direct influence from a strong role model in my own network.
How fortunate.
Yeah. And at that time, I remember thinking like, wow, this is so much to learn. It was my first duplex. It was 2 years out of college. There's so many different things that are absolutely new to me. And I'm curious what your advice would be for any others that are looking to take on their first rental property. Maybe they haven't yet gotten involved in a community yet, and they're just looking to take those first steps and really figure out what they need to be doing in order to be successful in real estate.
I think the biggest thing that I wish I did better, but I think I'm learning as I've gone along, is to really zone in on like what your superpower is, when it comes to investing. Obviously you're investing for some financial gain, of course. That's the output, right? Whether it's generational wealth, whether it's retirement planning, whether it's cash flow, whether it's, your whole financial picture. You're trying to like, I have a very high taxable income, so I need to bring that down somehow with some write-offs and depreciation and all those good things, that phenomenal things that real estate provides. So beyond those pieces, in investing and in the business, I think it's really, really helpful to know, what side of the coin you really are gravitated towards, because it's a lot of pieces of the puzzle. There's people that thrive because they're so good at managing budgets, managing timelines. They love renovating. There's other people that really love finding deals, and they're like out for the rest of it. They're just like, the management part's not as important to them. So knowing thyself and then deploying yourself accordingly, and being am I more on like the front end and finding deals, and I need partners or a team to help me manage things? Or am I just great at managing and I don't have enough deal flow. But once I get a property, I'm really great at putting a system in place, and I gravitate towards that. I think real estate investing in general is multiple pieces of the puzzle. It's not just as easy as like buying a stock, no offense, and seeing the return. It's not as simple as that, because you are the one a little more active in it. You're closer to it. It's an asset that has multiple facets, both on like an ops side and like a creative side, and so from a true personality perspective, you need all types to be actually effective, but you can't be all things. So you need to know where your sweet spot is personally, and then be able to figure out how you can either automate, outsource, or build a team around you. And even if that means like finding the right broker who's more aggressive, it doesn't necessarily mean bringing on employees, right? That's what people hear when I'm saying what I'm saying. It's not what I mean. You can bring on team members that are getting paid a commission, that are aligned with your personality, but are actually bringing something new to the table. Because if you're a private person and you don't like talking to homeowners, and I would really want an aggressive realtor on my team. I'd really want somebody who's able to hustle, because I don't want to, right? Kind of thing. So that's, I think, the biggest advice I'd have. And I think what slowed our growth, me and my husband, is that we were not as good on the operations side, and that stifled our growth because we tried to be. And when you try to be something that you think you need to be, you kind of don't go as fast and as far as you want to be until you start building out the team and partners. I mean, we were able to quadruple our unit count, our units, and our size of our portfolio when we really brought the right people in together and partnered with the right people. We kind of we just steadily grew when it was just us, him and I.
It's really interesting. Definitely insightful to know like your strengths and weaknesses. And I'm curious how you found those right partners that you knew that you could trust and you could really bring in and rely on. How do you vet those partners? How do you know that they're the right ones for you?
Yeah, there's a whole partnership guide we have too, Lia. I could share with you after to share with anyone listening. But we actually, Andres and I put together this guide because so many women want like a guide. They want a step by step. It's a free resource, but really there's things that you want similar. So there's alignment of like values and goals and kind of like philosophy, integrity, those pieces. And then there's diversity, and diversity should be different types of personalities, different types of skills, and obviously different types of experience. I think having in general, if you're more of a task person, like task oriented, detail oriented, introvert, like just give me things and I'll get things done. It's great to have maybe more of a big picture person who's a little more, relationship driven and more people driven. And if you're a people person who's more like visionary and you love ideas and you don't really want to do any of the ideas, you really need somebody who can be like, now we need to do this or that. And it wasn't until me and my husband are actually more similar. And so I think that stifled our growth because I ended up being more like the operator, and like, I'm not a great operator, but I became it because he really looked around and he wasn't going to do it. So, versus having a partner that could do it, I stepped out of that. He really brought in a new partners for our syndication business, really helped us propel. And at the same time, I started InvestHer with my partner, Andressa, who is very different from me, very complementary, but very different. So I think, ironically, we did that in two different businesses. And when we did that, our businesses grew and we were able to impact more people. In our family, we both are aligned in our personal goals and in our, those sort of things. We do certainly meet and we collaborate well, but day to day, we're very similar and we butt heads because we both want to be doing certain things. So we know the recipe that works for us. But yeah, I'd say that's where you want diversity, is personality, skills, and experience.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. I'm curious, taking a step back and looking at the investor community,
Mm-hmm.
I'm really curious if there's any specific trends that you've seen throughout the community, specific constant challenges or opportunities that the community is seeing, especially for those looking to juggle their careers, family, and investing.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, we read this book called Boundary Boss. Terry Cole, she's going to be one of the speakers at InvestHer Con. And so I think women, not that women all struggle with the same things, but what we're finding is women in general, want X, Y, Z, that, we have certain goals, especially entrepreneurial type of women who are like, I want all this. And then they're like, but I can't do it all myself. So the need to automate, the need to outsource, the need to get help in your home as well as at work increases as you play a bigger game and as you do more and you get more involved. But that's a transition. So really going from like Wonder Woman, what we've been taught, right? It's almost like a badge of honor to do as much as you are. How do you do all of that, right? Isn't that like a movie that came out? How does she do all of it? She doesn't do all of it. No one does it all without support on some level. So I think that like image of women has to really shift philosophically. I don't think that's a helpful image. I don't want to do it all. And I don't, and I think the first place for it to shift is at the home. If you're looking to build the business and you have a full-time job and you want to really start to invest and you have kids, it starts to feel like so overwhelming that women are like, I'm out, I'm not doing it. So I actually, I did this exercise with my husband where we actually did an audit of our household, and meaning all the things that have to happen, right? And literally from cooking to buying the groceries to everything. And what was fascinating was I was doing about 95% of it. And I have a partner, right? I have someone who I've been married 17 years and we have very open communication. I mean, not that it doesn't frustrate me sometimes when I knock his head against the wall, but besides that, overall, I'd say we have a pretty healthy marriage. Yet that was the situation. And so my point in sharing this is, until we really started to delineate and have kind of like a real conversation of what we need to do in the household, he's growing a business, I'm growing a business and a community. And these are our passions too, right? These aren't just businesses because we have nothing else to do. We're both very, very committed.
Mm-hmm.
We really need to let go of things in the home. Things that were like, okay, who's going to do what? And if you don't want to do it, who owns it? And then more importantly, I don't want to have to think about it because it's the mental load that women deal with. It's not so much the doing. It's like they're thinking for everyone, and that's got to stop because it's too much.
Mm-hmm.
It's too much up here. So
Mm-hmm.
doing that and things that we've done with the women in our community is like, okay, what can you start to let go of in the household? Because those are the conversations we have, Lia, with a lot of the women who are running multiple businesses. Their challenges,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of stuff as well, not just how to find their next deal. It's deeper. It's more meaningful because they're trying to live a life that they want versus just buying more or making more money. So those are the conversations that come up, or the guilt or the worth, and so moving through that and giving women the safe space to do that is what we stand for. We had a woman at a regional event who came up to me. She just came up to me. She's like, I'm a nurse. I have 4 kids. I work full time. I also have 4 rentals. And then she just took a breath and then she started crying. I mean, I talked to her. I didn't even say anything. It wasn't because of me. Like, I can't give myself that much credit, but it was just space to talk about your stuff. And this poor woman, you could just tell, like, it's like she doesn't have any space. She came here. She doesn't even know me. She started crying and then like opened up a bit about what she was struggling with. Right. I don't think that's unique because women just go hard. They go strong. And then they're like, someone says, how are you doing? And they just lose it because they're not
Yeah.
really staying true to how they are. So it's a lot I said there, but I think it's about being true to who you are, not doing it all. Who do I need to rely on and what can I let go of in our lives?
Mm-hmm.
Starts to create space, to have space to even talk about what's coming up for me and what do I want more of? What do I want less of? So.
Yeah, there's so much of what you said that resonates with me and that I see as well. And just having that, like you said, safe space and taking that brief moment to stop and think, how am I? Take a step back. And I'm curious, you mentioned this one story from the community. I'm curious what other success stories have surfaced up in your engagement with the women in the investor community. I'm curious from, new landlords to seasoned investors, kind of how you've seen people grow over time.
There's so many cool stories and there's probably so many more, Lia, that I don't even know about, right? That happened. But I think what's really neat is that women are not just supporting each other, they're being each other's kind of cheerleaders in a sense, but accountability is happening. So women are staying accountable to their goals. And, it's like one thing to achieve goals, it's another thing set goals, but it's another thing to achieve them. So this true accountability and support network has occurred, and it occurs on like a meetup level and certainly online, but on our meetup level. And I had a woman at one of our meetups, we were all introducing ourselves. And so woman stood up and said who she was. And she said, I've been to a lot of meetups. I've been wanting to invest for many years. I'm going through a divorce. My husband told me I never would be a good investor, but I'm not listening to him. And I'm here to get the support I need so I can make my dreams come true and leave a property or 2 or more to my kids. And everyone was like clapping. We don't even know this woman. We're cheering her on. And I think that's the kind of community we have. Like, it's like this shared experience. You don't really need to like know someone a long time. If you're building a community that is really having each other's back, I don't even know this woman. Like that's this woman crying in front of me. It wasn't because of me. It's just creating space. Same with this other woman. That is really powerful for women. I've seen relationships get saved. I've seen obviously rental income and goals get achieved, of course. I've seen partnerships happen. I've seen women retire from their jobs that they do not want to be doing anymore. And they really want to be going all in on investing and buying property. It's about the lifestyle, and it's about being who you want to be in all of that, not just number of doors. Because that is one thing that we always stress, that it's not about the number of doors. You can own a handful of properties. You can own 2 properties or 1 million and not be achieving what is important to you. It's not about the number of doors. So, but yeah, those are a couple examples, but it's about getting that space to be true to yourself and increase your income. I had a woman tell me too, she said, it's like my advisory board. So she's like, I'm not worried about buying any property because I know I'm going to bring all of you with me. Because I know whatever decision I have to make, whatever choice I have to make, from acquisition from offer to acquisition, I know I'll know the answer because all of you are going to jump in and help me. So I can give her my resources, or my network or whomever, right? Not just about me, but so that's kind of neat to know women are actually more aggressive on their buying because they have people behind them to help them.
Yeah, it's super powerful. I love the notion of an advisory board. I've heard previously about like the personal board of directors, the people that you lean on to help you make decisions in your personal life. And I love that that translates so well into real estate as well. And one last thing I wanted to touch on, you had mentioned about investing for your children and building generational wealth and that notion, which I believe is a lot of the reason that a lot of women get into real estate is wanting to make a better life for their families, for their children, making sure that they're well taken care of over time. I'm curious how that ties into real estate investing strategy, protecting your risk, thinking about ways to make sure that all of those investments are protected and that those assets are secure over the lifetime of those properties.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I was more interested when I started acquiring property than protecting property. And I think so many women are probably more on the protecting what they have and leveraging. You and I talked about that as we've, had multiple conversations, which have been great. It is about the protecting because you could have a rental property that you're under leveraged, right? Under leveraged from an insurance perspective, that something happens, all that income or all that, so to speak, leverage that you have in the property will go away. So I think for a lot of women that we serve, we're definitely serving that 35 to 55, 60-year-old woman who's really, I would say even older, probably 40-ish and older. They're really looking to aggressively acquire, although they want to acquire. It's about the protecting and the leverage and the maximizing what they have. So I think that becomes a part of when a plan when you get a little older. You become more interested in that. I don't think 20-year-olds care a lot about that. They don't. I didn't care about that when I was younger, but I think that and that's who we serve mostly. And a lot of the women in our community are in more of that age demographic. And so, but yeah, I can't stress that enough. I wish I thought about that when I was younger, but you think about just taking a little more risk and trying new things. I think if people step back and have a few properties and actually maximized those properties from a property management perspective, from an insurance perspective, from a leverage perspective financially, do they have money in the properties? Are they getting the most return out of their rental income? Maybe it's a single family home and it's time to go from a long-term rental to maybe short term, or even like college kids, and it's in a whatever the recipe is. But I think maximizing can look both from a technical perspective of income, but it's also about managing your expenses and how do I protect this asset and not overdo it, obviously, but obviously do it in an appropriate way. So protecting can then lead to leveraging. I think that's what is the key. Because there's so many ways you could be leveraging what you're doing, then you're not, versus just going out and getting more. It's a different, I think when people are getting outbid, especially in today's times of, not that people aren't buying property, but I know from a large multifamily perspective, we haven't done it. We haven't bought a multifamily property since 2022. It's been some time. And we're on the larger side, but the deals have not penciled out. So we've shifted our model of doing more of a fund where we're lending money out, and that's working. But in terms of property, we're maximizing and leveraging the properties we have and making sure they're working, they're streamlined versus maybe acquiring. So that is, I'm a big fan of, and I think that will never go out of style, especially depending on the ups and downs of the market and the ups and downs of the economy. There's always a good time to protect and manage your assets. It's never a bad time. Now it's probably more than important as ever because of people just not being able to buy new properties because of, for a variety of reasons.
Yeah, that's very well said. There's never a bad time to protect and leverage your property. I love that. Well, this has been super insightful. I could honestly keep picking your brain all day.
I love it.
The
I
work
love
of
the
the InvestHer
conversation.
community.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's just fantastic what you guys are doing. And we're very much looking forward to the InvestHer Con coming up in June.
Yes, we are too.
For those who are looking for more information, where should we direct our listeners to?
Yeah, we have a lot of free resources on our website, free ways to get involved in our community. If you just go to the realestateinvesther.com, there's so much information there. One of the simplest ways to recommend to people is to go to the events page. So literally the realestateinvesther.com/events. We do two free webinars a month. We have InvestHer Con on that same page. I know Lia's presented, and we just have some phenomenal thought leaders in the industry coming at it from a real estate perspective, from a business perspective, from a self-care perspective. So join us on one of these free events, get involved, and start showing up and getting what you want out of this endeavor. We're here for you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Liz. It's been great chatting with you. Really appreciate you being on today.
Thank you so much for having me.